So, good evening, or good late afternoon, and I'm honored to be talking here. My topic will be ghosts. Actually, ghosts in a family, to be more precise. Now, first of all, I have a question I want to pose you. Who of you believes in ghosts? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, that's quite a lot. Usually we believe in ghosts, or we believed in ghosts when we were a child, when we were small. Maybe descended down into a dungeon, we felt something. There might be a creepy figure coming up to be, but usually as rational, conscious beings, we don't really believe in ghosts as palpable beings which approach us, scare us, frighten us, and kind of derange us in our plans. But I have to tell you something. I am a psychotherapist and a conflict manager, and my experience is ghosts do exist. And my ambition is that at the end of this small contribution, you believe in ghosts too. So be aware. They do exist, but they exist in a different way. They don't appear as palpable figures which approach us from the outside, like in fairy tales. No, they have chosen another venue. They smuggled themselves into our minds. And from inside, they influence us, disturb us, distort our perceptions, kind of frighten us, scare us, but also might empower us. So actually they have become an unconscious complex inside of us, of which we're often not aware and which we often don't acknowledge. So actually ghosts do exist. Let me give you an example. I had a client of mine, a bright man. He was about 60. He was very talented, had many great ideas. He was a filmmaker, and he had a great future behind himself. Actually, his life had been quite a disaster. He always had great plans. He was very creative, had great plans, but he failed and was left with that. The problem was, and this was a pattern which had appeared in his life again and again, the problem was he wanted to achieve too much. His ambitions, his aspirations were too high, and he couldn't meet up. He couldn't actually materialize. This was a pattern which actually followed him his whole life, and unfortunately, he really couldn't do what he could have done. Now, I'm talking again as psychotherapist and conflict manager, of course. We seek deeper causes. Everything has a background story, and in order to alleviate, in order to solve a problem, we have to dig deeper. Now, with this man, he actually had a normal upbringing in Switzerland. He had a good-hearted mother who took care of him. He was actually a good child. He also had someone around who was his father, who was also a nice man, but there was always an itch. Even as a child, he felt something's a bit strange. He didn't really feel close to his father. He always felt, my father is a bit different. He's kind of not the same. Why doesn't he share the same interests? But he liked his father, he loved his father, but there was something strange. So he started asking questions to his mother. And he realized it's a sensitive issue. It's an issue his mother didn't really was as spontaneous as she usually would be. When he got a teenager, he interrogated her, and he found out his alleged father wasn't his biological father. His actual father was someone else, someone she had met in Paris, and apparently, as his mother confessed, a very flashy figure, a man, very intelligent, bright, many ideas, very creative, came from Bolivia, from the Bolivian upper class, and he had blood of Simon Bolivar in his veins. So he was a very special figure. Now, what had actually happened to him, unconsciously, this image of his real father seemed to have been around all the time. and it wasn't acknowledged. He was there, but not present. He was kind of a reality, a psychic reality, but he was not acknowledged. He was actually tabooed. And this apparently had a tremendous influence. I can give you another example experience. A doctor who was actually a female doctor who was very good as a doctor, but she always felt she had to do something good. She had to redeem herself. She found out when she was 40 that her loving grandfather, who she enjoyed, who had died by then, who she enjoyed as a small child, her grandfather had actually been a doctor, had been a Nazi. But he hadn't just been a Nazi, he was a Nazi scientist. And he had chosen prisoners, Jewish prisoners, and injected them salt water and meticulously made notes about the ordeal, how they actually died. This was also part of a ghost which was in the family, which actually haunted the family, not acknowledged, taboo. Now, I think I will say something about families. Now, we all grow up in a family. We're all kind of, as a child, we usually don't choose the family, so we have no interrogation assessment before, well, I want this family or that family. It just happens. So we land in a family, and families are, of course, is very important. That's where we get love, that's where we get caring, that's where we have an upbringing. And usually, we grow up in a family and start to share interests, values, lifestyles in the family. So the family is very important for the original imprint in the family. But there is a problem or an issue, a challenge. We don't just grow up in a family, we also grow out of a family. Of course, we're all individual beings, and we might share a lot, features, interests, values with the family we come from, but we also have differences. So it's a different, challenging process to actually find out who are we. And we have to cope with what the heritage in our family in order to find out who we are. Now you see, there's a problem. If a family has too many taboos, if a family has a history which is not acknowledged, if a family has ghosts in a certain way, this might become a problem because it's something which is hushed. And this is more even a problem nowadays as we just think of the nuclear family. Often families are just, they consider themselves mother, father, maybe siblings, and that's it. We forget that families also have a heritage, a psychological heritage. Grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-great-grandparents, uncles. This also influences a family, but is often not acknowledged, is often not talked about. And if this is done, they become stronger, more influential. It's a task which we are confronted with. And it's interesting, if you look, for instance, at Celtic communities in Scotland, Celtic communities, they used to have a tradition where the larger extended family sat together, uncle, aunts, friends, they sat together and started to reminiscence about their ancestors, their background, uncles, aunts. They would share stories of what they had done. They would share stories about their ambitions. They would share stories and issues about their crimes, about the naughty aunt, about the disastrous uncle. They would share this, be aware of it, rant about them, scold them. A lot of it was, of course, fiction, pure fiction. But some of this might be true because we can't beam ourselves back and just check, well, this is all true, facts. But this was important in order to deal with this history, it would deal with these ghosts. It also was a tradition in Switzerland, in the so-called Abusütz. Abusütz means sitting together in the evening. We would sit there in a valley, stare at the mountains, at the Alps. In Switzerland we have Alps, as you might have recognized. So we'd stare at the Alps, and what people don't know, in the olden days, up in the Alps were all the dead souls. They were kind of roaming around there, and so they would still existed there. So they would look at the Alps and start talking also about the ancestors, the aunt, tanks, and so what they'd done, the ordeal they had gone through. Now, this is something nowadays in a nuclear family we rarely do. think about past. We think it's irrelevant. We think actually just the upbringing of mother and father is relevant. We forget that the history, the background, everything is also important. And if it's tabooed, even has a lot more power on us. So it's important to talk about it. It's important to reveal it, to acknowledge it, in order also to free ourselves and to live with it, like with the filmmakers. Now, how can this be done? And I think it can be done in many ways. I think story rounds in a family would be great. You sit around maybe and share what you know. Maybe documents, photographs, heirlooms would be important. From one family, they had one heirloom from the 19th century, 1950, of an ancestor, and he had a napkin, and on this napkin was written, this is to remember the night I had with you. That's all. But apparently he was a waiter, traveled all around in Europe, and it somehow was a remembrance of something. So things like that are important. Apparently in certain Asian cultures you have a shrine within the house, a shrine where you have a lot of heirlooms, instruments or things from family members which had been deceased. So you're always remembered by that. And I think this is very important to do, something actually we should introduce more, especially in our culture, in the Western culture, which is actually is a bit egocentric and only concentrate on the nuclear family. So this is a task I would invite you to do this weekend, or maybe before Christmas you could include it or whatever. Well, thank you a lot for your attention.